Introduction. Most people believe transformation begins with massive effort, with a New Year's resolution, a strict routine, or an ambitious goal that promises a fresh start. But real change rarely starts with something big. It begins with something small, something almost invisible, a tiny win. Micro wins are the smallest actions that move you forward. One push-up, 1 minute of tidying, 1 sentence written, 1 honest breath before reacting. They are simple, repeatable, and surprisingly powerful. When practiced consistently, they become the foundation of confidence, discipline, identity, and momentum. This book exists to show you that your life doesn't change when you overhaul everything at once. It changes when you gently, repeatedly shift the gears of your daily behavior. Every chapter reveals how small actions influence your brain, emotions, routines, identity, and long-term trajectory. You'll learn how to create momentum, build systems, design supportive environments, break friction, maintain flow, and keep growing, even during setbacks, busy seasons, or plateaus. Most importantly, you'll learn how to make progress feel natural instead of exhausting. If you've ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, inconsistent, or unsure where to begin, this book offers a different approach, one rooted in simplicity and sustainability. It's not about perfection. It's not about intensity. It's about choosing the smallest possible step you can take today and letting it compound over time. By the end of this journey, you'll understand that micro wins aren't just small actions. They are identity-shaping, momentum-building signals to your brain that say, "I am becoming the kind of person who succeeds." Let's begin small, because small is where everything big starts. Contents. Introduction 4. Chapter 1. The Power of Micro Wins, 8. Chapter 2. Momentum over Motivation, 17. Chapter 3. Identity Anchors, 27. Chapter 4. Designing Your Pathway, 39. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Behavior, 48. Chapter 6. Friction and Flow, 60. Chapter 7. Rewriting Automatic Patterns, 70. Chapter 8. The 2-Minute Triumph, 81. Chapter 9. Emotional Energy Management, 90. Chapter 10. Building Unbreakable Routines, 98. Chapter 11. When Progress Stalls, 107. Chapter 12. The Accountability Engine, 115. Chapter 13. Scaling Small Wins, 125. Chapter 14. Celebrating Forward Motion, 134. Chapter 15. Your Lifetime System, 141. Chapter 1. The Power of Micro Wins. A micro win is a tiny action that helps you move forward, even if the step is very small. It is something easy, quick, and simple enough for you to do at any time. You do not need perfect motivation or a big burst of energy. A micro win can take only a moment, but it still matters because it shows you that progress is possible. Many people think change must be big to work. They imagine long workouts, huge goals, or major life changes happening all at once. But real improvement often starts with something much smaller. A micro win might be drinking a glass of water, reading 1 page, or tidying 1 small area. These actions look small, but they help you break the feeling of being stuck. Micro wins are important because they help you begin. Starting is usually the hardest part of any task. Once you take 1 tiny step, the next step feels easier. A micro win change. Micro wins also build trust in yourself. When you do something small every day, you start to believe you can make progress, even on tough days. You learn that you do not need to be perfect to move forward. This simple belief becomes stronger with each small step you take. A micro win is simple, but it is powerful. It is a gentle reminder that growth does not need to be dramatic. Every small action counts, and over time, those tiny steps shape your habits, your confidence, and your future. It started on a quiet morning when a man named Daniel sat at his kitchen table, feeling heavy and stuck. His life felt too big, too messy, and too hard to fix. For months, he wanted to get healthier, get organized, and feel better about himself. But every goal felt like a mountain he could not climb. On that morning, he had no plan, no energy, and no belief that he could change anything. Then something small happened. He picked up one empty cup from the table and placed it in the sink. That tiny action felt useless at first. It was only one cup. But something shifted inside him. For the first time in weeks, he had done something that moved his life forward, even if it was small. He looked around the room and saw another cup, so he picked that one up too. Soon he gathered a few plates. Then he wiped the table. Each step was small, but with every small action, he felt a little lighter, a little clearer, and a little more in control. When he finished, the room looked cleaner, and something inside him felt brighter. He realized that the feeling of being stuck had not come up from the size of his problems. It came from not moving at all. That one tiny action, picking up a cup, had shown him that he was not powerless. He could take small steps. He could make progress, even on hard days. It gave him enough confidence to take another small step, and then another. Later that day, Daniel went for a short walk. Not a long one, just 5 minutes. The next day, he did the same thing. By the end of the week, he was walking 10 minutes. By the end of the month, he was walking a full mile. What started as one tiny action, lifting a cup, had slowly grown into a new habit, a new routine, and a new way of living. Looking back, Daniel realized that his life did not change because of one big decision. It changed because of one tiny moment when he decided to do something instead of nothing. That small action became the first spark of momentum, and that momentum carried him forward into a better and more hopeful life. Sometimes the smallest step is the one that changes everything. Not. Micro wins are like tiny drops of water falling into a bucket. At first, each drop seems too small to matter. One drop makes almost no difference. 2 drops barely change anything. If you look at the bucket after only a few drops, you might think nothing is happening. But the bucket is filling, slowly, quietly, and steadily. As the drops continue, something begins to change. The bottom of the bucket becomes covered with water. Then the level rises a little more. You still might not notice much, but the bucket keeps filling one drop at a time. Each drop is small, but none of them are wasted. If you walk away and return later, suddenly the bucket looks different. It is half full, or maybe even overflowing. You did not see the moment when it changed. The big result did not come from one large splash. It came from thousands of tiny drops working together. This is exactly how micro wins work. Each small action may feel too small to matter. Reading one page, taking one deep breath, cleaning one corner, walking for 2 minutes. But when you repeat these small steps, they stack up. They slowly fill your life with progress until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. Micro wins are the drops. Your life is the bucket. Keep adding to it, and eventually the results will rise. A reader can experience a micro win within 30 seconds by doing something so small and simple that it almost feels effortless. For example, they could take a moment to breathe slowly and deeply. One calm breath in, one calm breath out. This tiny action takes only a few seconds, but it instantly brings a small sense of control and peace. They could also look around their room and choose one small thing to fix. A pen on the floor, a dish on the table, a shirt on the chair. Picking it up and putting it where it belongs creates an immediate feeling of order. It is a tiny action, but it sends a message to the brain. I can make things better. Another easy micro win is writing down one simple goal for the day. Not a big plan, just one clear step they want to take. The act of writing it down gives direction and focus, which already feels like progress. It takes only a few seconds, yet it creates a sense of purpose. Even drinking a sip of water can be a micro win. In that short moment, the reader does something healthy for their body, reminding themselves that small care still matters. A micro win does not need to be impressive, it just needs to be done. In less than half a minute, any tiny action can shift a person's energy, boost their mood, and remind them that change is always possible, even in the smallest moments. Micro wins create early confidence because they give you proof, real physical proof, that you can take action. When a task feels big or overwhelming, it is easy to doubt yourself. You might wonder if you have the discipline, the strength, or the motivation to change. But the moment you complete one tiny step, even a very small one, that doubt begins to shrink. You see yourself doing something, and that alone makes you feel a little stronger. Micro wins also build confidence by giving the brain something positive to hold on to. Every time you complete a small action, your brain receives a quick signal of success. It feels good, even if the action was tiny. This feeling creates a small spark of motivation, and that spark makes it easier to take the next step. One tiny win leads to another, and each one adds a new layer of belief in yourself. Another way micro wins create confidence is through consistency. Big achievements take time, and people often feel discouraged when results take too long. But micro wins give you a way to succeed every day. Even on days when you are tired, stressed, or unmotivated, you can still do something small. This steady stream of little victories shows you that you are capable of showing up again and again. Micro wins also change how you see yourself. When you keep completing small steps, you begin to think of yourself as someone who takes action, someone who follows through. Your slowly shifts. You stop telling yourself, I can't, and start thinking, I'm someone who makes progress. This simple shift creates powerful confidence. Over time, these tiny wins form a strong foundation. They make you believe that bigger goals are possible because you've already proven to yourself that you can move forward, even in small ways. Early confidence doesn't come from huge victories. It comes from simple steps repeated with patience and trust. Micro wins shift a person's mindset from feeling stuck to feeling like they are growing because they interrupt the feeling of helplessness. When someone feels stuck, they often believe that nothing they do will make a difference. They see their problems as too big and their energy as too small. But when they take one tiny action and complete it, even something simple, it breaks that mental wall. It shows them that movement is still possible, even if it is small. Micro wins also begin to change the way a person talks to themselves. When someone feels stuck, their thoughts often sound heavy. I can't do this, nothing will change, or I'm failing. But a small win creates a new message in the mind. I just did something. This message is quiet but powerful. It gently pushes the negative thoughts aside and replaces them with a sense of ability. No. Another way micro wins shift the mindset is by creating forward motion. Feeling stuck is often not about the size of the problem. It's about not moving at all. When you take a small step, your brain feels that movement. It senses progress. Even if the step is tiny, it breaks the feeling of being frozen. It tells you, you're not standing still anymore. Micro wins also help the mind focus on what is possible instead of what is wrong. When you complete a small action, your brain starts scanning for the next small thing you can do. It moves from fear to curiosity, from doubt to possibility. This shift is the beginning of a growth mindset. Over time, these tiny steps create a pattern. The brain starts to expect progress instead of failure. It learns that growth does not require perfection or huge effort. It only requires small, steady movement. Slowly, the person moves from feeling trapped to feeling hopeful, and from feeling powerless to believing they can grow. Maria had spent years trying to get healthier, but every time she started a new workout plan, she pushed too hard, got exhausted, and quit within a week. She thought the only way to improve her fitness was to make huge changes. Long workouts, strict diets, and perfect discipline. Because she couldn't keep up with those demands, she began to believe she simply wasn't strong enough or motivated enough. One afternoon, after another failed attempt, she sat on her couch feeling frustrated. She didn't want to give up completely, but she didn't know where to begin. Then she remembered something a friend once told her. Just start small, really small. So she decided to do something almost laughably tiny. She stood up, walked to the end of her driveway, and came back inside. The whole thing took less than a minute. It didn't feel like exercise. It didn't feel like much of anything. But she noticed a small spark of pride inside her chest. She had done something. She had moved. That tiny walk was her first micro win. The next day, she walked a little farther, 2 houses down. The day after that, she made it to the corner. Each walk was short, but each one built a little more confidence. Over the next few weeks, her tiny steps turned into a gentle habit. She began to look forward to her walks because they didn't feel overwhelming. They felt doable. She started breathing easier, her legs grew a little stronger, and her mind felt clearer. She wasn't losing massive weight or running miles, but she was growing, and she could feel it. Months later, she realized she had built a full routine without forcing herself or burning out. She was now walking every morning, sometimes even jogging for short bursts. What made the difference wasn't a big goal or a strict plan. It was the small steps that slowly shaped her mindset and strengthened her body. Maria finally understood that fitness doesn't begin with big achievements. It begins with micro wins, those tiny, repeated actions that quietly build strength, confidence, and momentum. And once those small wins start adding up, the path forward becomes clearer than ever. The emotional impact of achieving tiny victories is stronger than most people expect. When you complete a small action, even something quick or simple, it creates a quiet sense of relief. It tells your mind, I can do this. That feeling may be small, but it breaks through the heaviness that comes from doubt, stress, or overwhelm. It lightens the emotional load, even if only a little. Each tiny victory gives a moment of pride. It might not be dramatic, but it is real. You feel a gentle warmth inside, the kind that makes you stand a little taller or breathe a little easier. This feeling matters because it replaces discouragement with hope. It tells your emotions that progress is possible and that you are not stuck where you were. Tiny victories also create a sense of control. When life feels chaotic or confusing, small wins remind you that you still have power over your choices. You might not be able to fix everything at once, but you can make something better right now. That sense of control calms the mind and brings steadiness to the heart. Another emotional benefit is motivation. When you complete a small win, your brain releases a small burst of satisfaction. This feeling becomes encouragement to try again. It becomes a loop. Small win, small joy, small motivation, another small win. Over time, this emotional cycle becomes a source of strength. Tiny victories also quiet the negative voices inside you. The doubts that say, you can't change or you always fail, become softer each time you prove them wrong, even in a very small way. Those tiny moments of success create new emotional patterns, ones filled with possibility instead of fear. In the end, the emotional impact of tiny victories is simple but powerful. They lift your spirit, calm your mind, reduce your stress, and help you feel capable. They turn heavy days into lighter ones and slowly rebuild your confidence. Each tiny victory is like a small light, and the more you collect, the brighter your life begins to feel. A simple daily micro-win routine can start the moment you wake up. As soon as you sit up in bed, you take one slow breath in and one slow breath out. This tiny action sets a calm tone for the day and reminds you that you can begin gently, not rushed. After getting out of bed, you make one small improvement to your space. It could be fixing the pillow, folding one blanket, or placing one item where it belongs. This takes less than 20 seconds, but it gives you an early feeling of control and order. Before breakfast, you drink one glass of water. It is a tiny act of care for your body, a reminder that you can support yourself in small ways throughout the day. Later, before starting your work or daily tasks, you write down one simple goal. Not 5 goals, not a full plan, just one thing you want to complete. This gives your mind direction without overwhelming you. At some point during the day, you take a short movement break. Maybe you stretch your arms for a few seconds or take a quick walk down the hallway. This tiny action wakes up your body and refreshes your energy. In the afternoon or evening, you clean one small area, a single drawer, one corner of a table, or a few items on the floor. This tiny win builds a sense of progress in your environment without requiring much effort. Before bed, you take a moment to notice one thing you did well that day. It doesn't matter how small it is. Maybe you answered one message, cooked one simple meal, or kept your promise to drink more water. This final micro-win helps your mind end the day with gratitude instead of stress. None of these steps are huge, and none require much time. But together, They create a gentle rhythm of progress, tiny victories that collect throughout the day and slowly shift your life toward growth, confidence, and calm. Chapter 2. Momentum over motivation. Waiting for motivation sets people up for failure because motivation is unpredictable. It comes and goes like the weather, and it cannot be trusted to show up when you need it most. If you depend on feeling inspired before taking action, you will spend many days stuck. Hard tasks will stay undone, and important goals will sit untouched simply because the right feeling never arrived. Another problem is that motivation often appears after you start doing something, not before. People think they need motivation first, but in reality, action usually creates motivation. When someone waits for the perfect burst of energy, they miss the chance to build momentum through small steps. They remain trapped in a cycle of delay. Waiting for motivation also sets unrealistic expectations. It makes people believe they must feel ready, confident, or excited before starting. But most meaningful progress begins when you take the step even while feeling unsure or unprepared. If you wait to feel perfect, you may never begin at all. People who wait for motivation also tend to judge themselves harshly. When the feeling doesn't come, they blame themselves and assume they are lazy or broken. This adds guilt and discouragement, making it even harder to move forward. In reality, they are not lacking discipline. They are simply relying on the wrong strategy. The truth is that motivation is unreliable, but tiny actions are dependable. You can always choose one small step, even without motivation. That tiny step creates a micro win, and that micro win builds momentum. This momentum leads to more action, which eventually generates the motivation you were waiting for. In the end, waiting for motivation leads to failure because it hands your progress over to your emotions. Taking small steps, even on low-energy days, gives you power over your life again. Instead of waiting to feel ready, you create readiness through action. One small action produces momentum because it breaks the stillness that keeps a person stuck. When you stand still for too long, everything around you feels heavier. Even simple tasks begin to look impossible. But the moment you take one tiny step, you interrupt that heaviness. You create movement, and movement naturally leads to more movement. It's like pushing a heavy door, hard to start, but once it begins to swing, it becomes easier to keep going. A small action also gives your brain something new to focus on. Instead of thinking about everything you haven't done, or everything that feels overwhelming, your mind suddenly has proof that progress is possible. This proof builds a little spark of energy inside you. That spark makes the next step feel less intimidating and more achievable. Momentum grows because small actions create emotional shifts. You feel a bit more capable, a bit more hopeful. That tiny emotional lift is enough to help you take another small step. And that next step adds a little more confidence. Soon, you have a chain of small wins, each one feeding the next. Another reason one small action creates momentum is that it simplifies the path forward. Large goals feel complicated, but a single action is clear and easy to understand. When you complete it, your brain naturally asks, "What else can I do?" Suddenly, instead of feeling stuck, you are looking for the next small task. That curiosity becomes energy, and that energy becomes momentum. Even your body responds to tiny steps. When you start moving, even in small ways, your muscles wake up, Your breathing changes, and your posture shifts. Your body sends signals to your brain that say, "We are active now." Those signals strengthen your desire to keep going. In the end, one small action is powerful because it turns thought into movement and movement into progress. Momentum doesn't come from giant leaps. It comes from the first tiny step that tells your mind and body, "We're going forward now." That single step is enough to start everything. James had been avoiding cleaning his bedroom for weeks. Every time he walked past the door, he felt overwhelmed just thinking about the mess. Clothes were piled on the chair, papers covered his desk, and the floor was barely visible. He kept telling himself he would clean it when he had more energy, but that day never seemed to come. The task felt too big, so he kept doing nothing. One afternoon, feeling frustrated, he decided to do the smallest thing he could think of. He picked up one shirt from the floor and folded it. That was it, just one shirt. It took less than 10 seconds. It didn't change the whole room, but it changed how he felt. The room looked one tiny bit better, and that tiny improvement gave him a small spark of relief. Because he felt that spark, he picked up one more shirt. Then he tossed an empty water bottle into the trash. A few minutes later, he straightened a stack of books on the desk. None of these actions were big, but each one made the next step feel easier. The mess didn't look like a giant wall anymore. It looked like a series of small pieces he could handle. Before he realized it, 10 minutes had passed. The chair was clear. The floor was visible again. His desk looked almost neat. The room wasn't perfect, but it was no longer overwhelming. All of that progress came from the first tiny action, picking up one shirt. Momentum had done the rest. One small step turned into another, and then another. The job that once felt impossible became manageable simply because he began. This is momentum in real life. A gentle push that grows stronger with every small action, carrying you forward even when the task feels too big to face. Feeling ready and being ready are two very different things. Feeling ready is an emotional state. It depends on your mood, your confidence, and how comfortable you feel in the moment. When people wait to feel ready, they are often waiting for fear to disappear, for doubts to fade, or for a perfect moment to appear. But that moment rarely comes. Feelings rise and fall, and they cannot be trusted as the starting point for change. Being ready, on the other hand, is a choice. It does not depend on confidence or excitement. It simply means you decide to take a small step, even if you feel nervous or unsure. Being ready is practical. It is about action, not emotion. You don't need the perfect mood to begin. You only need the willingness to try. Feeling ready keeps you waiting. It makes you believe you must fix your emotions before you can move. It tells you that doubt is a stop sign. But being ready understands that doubt is normal. It accepts that progress often begins with shaky hands or an uncertain heart. Being ready says, "I don't feel fully prepared, but I will start anyway." Feeling ready looks for confidence first. Being ready gains confidence later, through action, through small wins, and through momentum. One depends on emotion, the other depends on movement. In the end, the difference is simple. Feeling ready is a wish, but being ready is a decision. You grow the moment you choose action over waiting, even when your feelings aren't perfect. Sophie woke up feeling tired and discouraged. Nothing was wrong. but nothing felt right either. Her room was messy, her to-do list was long, and her motivation was low. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the floor, feeling like the day was already slipping away. She didn't know where to start, so she almost didn't start at all. Then she noticed a single sock lying near her desk. It wasn't important, but it was something she could fix. She reached down, picked it up, and tossed it into the laundry basket. It took 2 seconds. It wasn't impressive, but it gave her a tiny sense of relief. That tiny feeling was her first hint of momentum. Because her body was already moving, she picked up another piece of clothing. Then she straightened a crooked picture frame. After that, she placed 2 books back on her shelf. Each little action made the next one feel easier, and her energy slowly shifted from heavy to light. What once felt like a mountain of clutter began to feel like a series of small, doable steps. Within 10 minutes, her room looked noticeably better. She felt clearer, calmer, and more in control. That new feeling carried her into the next part of her day. She made her bed. She opened a window for fresh air. Then she sat at her desk and wrote down one simple task for work. Just one. Completing it took only a few minutes, and the small success made her feel capable enough to try another task. By the afternoon, Sophie had finished more in one day than she had done in the entire week before. Her energy was steady, her stress was lower, and her mind felt focused. She couldn't point to one big moment that changed everything. The shift began with one tiny action, a single sock. Momentum had carried her forward. What started as a small step had grown into confidence, clarity, and productivity. Her whole day transformed not because she felt ready, but because she moved and kept moving, one small step at a time. Here is a simple 60-second momentum-building exercise that anyone can do, no matter how tired or unmotivated they feel. The goal is not to finish a big task, but to wake up your mind and body with 1 minute of small, steady action. For the first 10 seconds, take one slow breath in and one slow breath out. This clears a little space in your mind and helps you settle into the moment. It reminds you that you are here and you can begin gently. For the next 20 seconds, look around and fix one tiny thing in your environment. Pick up one item, wipe one small surface, close one drawer, or toss one piece of trash. Don't try to clean everything. Just choose a single action. When you finish it, notice how the room looks even slightly better. That tiny improvement is your first spark of momentum. For the next 20 seconds, move your body in a simple way. Stretch your arms, roll your shoulders, or take a few steps around the room. You are not exercising. You are reminding your body that movement is possible, even in small doses. This gentle motion wakes up your energy and pushes away the stuck feeling. For the final 10 seconds, say one clear intention out loud or in your mind. Something small like, I will start, I can take one step, or I'm moving forward today. This simple message tells your brain what direction you're choosing. Within 1 minute, you have breathed, taken action, moved, and set a direction. None of these steps are big, but together they create a sense of motion. They turn stillness into progress, and they help you step into the rest of your day with a little more confidence and energy. When people say action leads to motivation, they are describing a very real process in the brain. Motivation does not magically appear before you start. It is created after you take even the smallest step. and the brain plays a big role in this. When you complete a tiny action, your brain releases a small amount of dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical that makes you feel rewarded, encouraged, and curious. It is often called the motivation chemical. But the important part is this: dopamine is released after you take action, not before. This is why the first step feels the hardest. Your brain has not received any reward yet. Once you take that tiny step and get that small burst of dopamine, your brain becomes more willing to take another step. It wants more of that good feeling. This creates a loop. Small action, small reward desire to repeat more action. Another part of the brain involved is the basal ganglia. This area helps build habits by repeating patterns. When you take a small action regularly, the basal ganglia begins to recognize the pattern and makes it feel easier over time. It turns the action into something automatic, which means you need less motivation to do it. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, also benefits from small steps. When a task feels too big, this area becomes overwhelmed, and you feel stuck. But when you break a task into tiny actions, the prefrontal cortex can handle it more easily. Small steps calm the brain instead of stressing it, which makes starting much simpler. Even your nervous system reacts. When you take action, your body shifts from a frozen, overwhelmed state into a more active one. This physical shift sends signals back to your brain, saying, "We are moving, we are capable." Those signals build confidence and create more motivation. In simple terms, the brain rewards progress, not intention. Thinking about doing something does not create motivation, but doing something small does. This is why action leads to motivation. The brain learns from what you do, not from what you plan. And every tiny step teaches it to keep going. Momentum helps overcome procrastination because it breaks the heavy feeling that keeps you stuck. Procrastination often begins with fear, stress, or the belief that a task is too big to handle. When you haven't started yet, the job feels like a giant wall you can't climb. But the moment you take one small step, the wall begins to shrink. Momentum turns the impossible into something manageable. When you complete a tiny action, your brain feels a quick sense of reward. This reward creates a small burst of energy that makes the next step feel easier. Instead of staring at the whole task and feeling overwhelmed, you start focusing on the next small piece. This shift in focus is powerful. It moves you from thinking to doing, from avoiding to engaging. Momentum also quiets the negative thoughts that feed procrastination. Before starting, your mind tells you things like, "This will take too long. I don't know where to begin," or "I'll do it later." But once you start moving, even very slowly, these thoughts lose their strength. Action takes the place of worry, and progress takes the place of fear. Another reason momentum helps is that it builds trust in yourself. Each small step proves that you can move forward, even when you don't feel ready. This growing sense of ability pushes back against the doubt and hesitation that normally keep you stuck. The more steps you take, the more confident you become. Momentum also changes your emotional state. Procrastination thrives when you feel tired, stressed, or unsure. But even a small bit of movement lifts your mood. Your body wakes up, your mind clears, and your energy rises. This emotional shift makes it easier to continue instead of stopping again. In the end, Momentum beats procrastination because it creates a simple truth. Progress feels good. Once you feel that good feeling, even from a tiny step, you naturally want to take another. Procrastination fades, not because the task becomes smaller, but because you begin to move. And every small movement builds the strength to keep going. Rebuilding momentum after losing it starts with letting go of guilt. Many people stop their progress for a few days or even weeks, and then feel ashamed or frustrated. That guilt becomes a heavy weight that makes it harder to start again. The first step is to remind yourself that losing momentum is normal. It happens to everyone. You are not starting from zero. You're starting from experience. The next step is to shrink your expectations. When people try to make up for lost time, they jump into big actions, which only leads to more burnout. Instead, choose one tiny step, something small enough that you know you can do it today, even if your energy is low. This could be writing one sentence, cleaning one corner, or taking one short walk. This small step is your restart button. After taking that tiny step, repeat it again the next day. Keep the focus on small, steady actions rather than big leaps. Your goal is not to impress yourself. It is to rebuild movement. Every tiny step sends a signal to your brain. We are back in motion. That signal slowly rebuilds your confidence and restores your sense of ability. It also helps to reconnect with your why. Ask yourself why the goal mattered to you in the first place. Maybe it was for your health, your peace, your future, or your happiness. Remembering the reason behind your actions gives you a gentle push forward, not through pressure, but through purpose. Another useful approach is to remove any barriers that made progress hard before. If your environment was cluttered, clear one small space. If distractions kept pulling you away, silence one notification. If the task felt too big, break it into pieces even smaller than before. Make starting as easy as possible. Finally, celebrate the restart. Even one tiny step after a pause is a victory. It proves that you didn't give up. You returned. That small win begins the process of rebuilding momentum. With gentle patience and simple steps, the movement grows stronger again. And soon you find yourself moving forward with confidence and ease. Daily micro-momentum checklist. 1. Do one tiny action toward your goal. Even something that takes 10-30 seconds counts. 2. Celebrate the action immediately. Say good job, smile, or take a slow breath. 3. Remove one small barrier. Clear a space, close a tab, or silence one notification. 4. Do a 30-second reset. Stand, stretch, breathe, or walk to the next room. 5. Review your why. Remind yourself in one short sentence why this goal matters. 6. Make tomorrow easier. Prepare one tiny thing in advance. 7. Track one win. Write down a single tiny victory from today. 8. Limit overthinking. If you start to hesitate, do something small for 10 seconds. 9. Check in with your mood without judgment. Notice how you feel, but don't let it control your action. 10. End the day with one closing step. Put something away or plan one tiny action for tomorrow. Chapter 3. Identity anchors. An identity anchor is a small but powerful belief you choose about the kind of person you want to become. It acts like a steady hand on your shoulder, guiding you forward even when life feels confusing, stressful, or uncertain. Instead of focusing only on what you want to achieve, An identity anchor focuses on who you are becoming. It becomes a quiet sentence you can return to again and again. Something simple, comforting, and strong. Many people try to change their lives by setting big goals, but goals alone can feel heavy or distant. An identity anchor works differently. It shifts your attention from the outcome to the person behind the outcome. When you choose an identity like, I am a person who tries again, or I am someone who takes small steps, you give yourself a foundation that doesn't break when you have a bad day. This belief becomes a home you can return to, no matter what is happening around you. Identity anchors also help you act with more consistency. When you tell yourself, I am a reader, picking up a book for 5 minutes feels natural. When you believe, I am someone who takes care of my body, going for a short walk feels like something you do rather than something you must force. Your actions become easier because they match the identity you chose. Another reason identity anchors work so well is that they grow with you. Your goals might change, your environment might shift, but your chosen identity can stay steady. It is flexible enough to stay relevant, but strong enough to guide your behavior. When motivation fades, which it often does, your identity anchor quietly steps in and reminds you who you want to be today. Over time, each small action you take becomes evidence for that identity. A 5-minute habit, a tiny choice, or a small moment of effort, all help you prove to yourself that your anchor is true. And when you start to believe in that identity deeply, your habits change naturally. You don't have to push yourself as much. You start acting like the person you believe you are becoming. In this way, an identity anchor is not just a phrase. It is a personal promise, a gentle direction you choose for your life. It holds you steady, it shapes your actions, and it helps you grow into the version of yourself you know you can be. Small behaviors shape self-perception in quiet but powerful ways. Every time you take a small action, you send a message to your brain about the kind of person you are. Even tiny choices, like drinking a glass of water, writing one sentence, or taking a short walk, add up to a growing sense of identity. You begin to see yourself not through your hopes or your plans, but through your actions, even the smallest ones. When you repeat a small behavior, your mind starts to connect the dots. If you read for 5 minutes each day, you begin to think, maybe I really am someone who reads. If you save a little money each week, you begin to believe, maybe I can be responsible with money. These small actions become evidence, and your brain trusts evidence more than wishes. Each tiny step becomes a vote for the kind of person you want to be. The surprising thing is that the actions don't need to be large or impressive. Small behaviors work because they are easy to repeat. When you repeat something often, it becomes a natural part of your identity. Over time, your self-perception shifts from doubt to confidence, from uncertainty to clarity. You see yourself differently because you are living differently, one small choice at a time. Little actions whisper the truth. This is who you are becoming. And the more you follow those whispers, the stronger your sense of identity grows. Maya never thought of herself as a healthy person. For most of her life, she told herself stories like, I'm too busy, or I'm not disciplined. These thoughts felt true because they had been repeated for years. But one day, she decided she was tired of feeling stuck. She didn't make a big plan or a huge promise. Instead, she chose one tiny action. Every morning, She would drink 1 glass of water before checking her phone. At first, it didn't feel like much. It took less than a minute, and she wasn't sure it mattered. But she kept doing it. Day after day, that single glass of water became her small signal that she cared about herself. It was just one action, but it changed how she started each morning. Instead of waking up distracted, she woke up with a tiny act of intention. A week later, she added another small action. After her glass of water, she stretched her arms for 10 seconds. Not a workout, just a stretch. Again, it seemed small, almost too small to matter. But each time she did it, she felt a quiet shift inside. She started thinking, maybe I'm someone who takes care of my body? It wasn't a loud thought, but it was new, and it felt good. A month passed, and these micro-actions began to ripple through her day. She started packing an apple in her bag instead of buying snacks. She walked for 5 minutes during her lunch break. She went to bed 10 minutes earlier. None of these steps were big, but each one was another vote for a new identity, one she had never believed she could have. As weeks turned into months, Maya realized something powerful. She didn't become healthier because of one huge decision. She became healthier because of a series of tiny choices that slowly changed how she saw herself. Her identity shifted from, I'm not disciplined, to, I'm someone who takes small steps every day. And once she believed that, everything became easier. By the end of the year, Maya didn't just feel healthier. She felt proud, steady, and confident. Her identity wasn't built in a moment. It was built in hundreds of tiny moments where she chose the person she wanted to become. Step by step, action by action, she became her own proof. Let's exercise, choosing a new identity. Sit quietly for a moment and think about the identity that has been holding you back. It might sound like, I'm always inconsistent, or I can't stay focused, or I never finish things. Write down one sentence that describes the story you want to leave behind. Do not judge it, just acknowledge it. Step 2. Decide who you want to become. Now choose a simple, empowering identity that feels possible for you. It should be short, clear, and gentle. Something like, I am someone who grows, or I am a person who follows through, or I am someone who takes small steps. Pick one identity that feels true enough to start, but big enough to inspire you. Step 3. Choose one tiny action that matches it. Think of a small behavior, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, that proves this identity. If your new identity is, I am someone who grows, your tiny action might be reading 1 paragraph a day. If your identity is, I am someone who takes care of myself, your tiny action might be drinking a glass of water each morning. Make the action so small, you can do it even on a bad day.